X, The Man with the X-Ray Eyes from 1963 is a Roger Corman directed movie about a doctor who comes up with a way to enhance his vision and be able to see wavelengths that normal eyes can't pick up.
So it's an American International Picture distributed movie.
Roger Corman did a lot of stuff for them early on.
Let's talk about Roger Corman just for a minute.
Okay.
Roger Corman is known for making quote-unquote bad movies, but they're not all bad. They're definitely low budget. Usually when people say, oh, it's just another Roger Corman movie, you get that impression of what kind of movie it is. And it always surprises me what a normal guy he is. Every time I see him, he just looks like a regular guy. But I expect him from these movies that he's associated with to look more like an Alan Moore type character.
Roger Corman is known for making exploitation movies with nudity and gore and distasteful subject matter to the general public, and I feel like they don't look past that at all to the quality of the actual movies. I mean, Roger Corman himself was as much a businessman as he was a filmmaker. He knew what was going to sell, so he'd make a movie that way if it was the right financial decision. But when it came to actually making movies, he was a good filmmaker. He thought about where to put the camera, how to tell the story, what you needed to make the movie work, and what should be cut out. And he made some good movies.
And a lot of filmmakers who have had very lucrative careers started working with Roger Corman, and they attribute a lot of their success to working with him.
Yeah, in that sense, he is easily the most successful film producer in history. He's had more success and led to more success for other people than any other individual that's ever worked in the industry. The movie starts out with a close-up shot of an eyeball, and it just holds on there for almost an entire minute.
And there's no text in front of it or anything.
I think there were originally a lot more shots of people playing around with eyeballs in a medical type setting, and they decided to cut them out because it was too graphic or something like that.
And then they show an eyeball in a beaker of pink liquid that doesn't look great. Again, if you're going in with the preconception that this is a Roger Corman movie, that part will not surprise you. And then we get to the cool purple spiral. It's a simple idea used effectively.
The music is really cool right from the beginning, and it makes you kind of intrigued as to what this movie's going to be.
The music is very contemporary film for the time. It's very dissonant throughout, going more for an atmospheric feeling rather than themes and motifs. It's very intentional and specific. There's a lot of experimentation going on, but it's done very well.
It's very effective in context.
So we know it's a low-budget movie. We know it's a very sci-fi concept that you would find in the back of a comic book. So taking that simplistic idea and making it into a film. When shitty movies come out today, everything about them is shitty. The mechanics of the filmmaking, the writing, the actors, everything is bad. This would be, I guess, back in the day considered a shitty movie, but the actors alone do a good job. They're engaging to watch, they know their craft, and even though they know this movie was pretty much garbage for the time, they do a good job.
That's something you usually get from Roger Corman, even if it's a low-budget movie that was shot in 3 days. Everybody did their part with maximum effort, whether they're behind the camera or in front of the camera. Everybody does their job efficiently and effectively.
They understand that their work is going towards the end product. If you walk into a project thinking this is stupid, then it's going to be reflected in the work.
Right.
So Ray Milland is the main scientist who comes up with this procedure, and they're testing it on animals first.
Yeah, I definitely don't like the scene with the monkey. It makes me uncomfortable that they used a real monkey, even if they're not actually harming it.
I like how they have so many explanations for things that sound plausible for the movie. The science, while not legit in reality, is legit for the movie, and it works.
The movie is definitely well written, and well written to the point where there aren't any scenes that feel pointless or feel like padding or anything like that. Every scene drives the story forward in some way, or it reveals character in some way. Every scene feels like it matters.
Ray Milland plays Dr. James Xavier, and he is working with Dr. Diane Fairfax.
Just their names, yeah. X, the man with the X-ray eyes, so of course his name is Xavier.
Oh, I guess I didn't think of that. She serves as the audience character where he explains everything to her of how it's going to work and the process and everything, so we as an audience understand it too. And he's also trying to woo her a little bit. The writing is good, even within conversations. I don't get bored listening to them talk about whatever they're talking about, because it's pushing the story forward.
Right. In a real crappy movie, this would be something that it was just, we need this scene in here, let's just get it out of the way. But in a Roger Corman movie, there's thought put into how it's presented and how it plays out.
And questions an audience member would ask watching it, a character usually asks those questions, and then they're answered. But I like when Diane is asking him, what would you do with this power? How would you use it? And he has this well thought out explanation all ready to go.
Oh, there are thousands of ways. You're sitting right on top of probably the most important one right here. In this hospital, there are people I can help.
He does give reasons initially for why he wants to do it, but then he doesn't seem to really follow up on them later, but it works well for the scene.
So just like now, you have to do so much testing on sample subjects before you move to human testing. Xavier gets mad that it's taking so long, which I imagine is what a lot of scientists and stuff think now when they want to move things forward. So he says, I'm going to test it on myself. And his colleague says, that's crazy. Why would you do that? Why don't we test it on some student first?
And that other doctor is so strongly opposed to it at first, to him doing it on himself, but then he pretty much caves completely after just a minute of conversation.
It's because Raymond Land is taller than him. Okay, I don't know if I'm alone here, but whenever in movies or TV, when someone drops something into their eyes, my eyes start to water.
Yeah, it makes me uncomfortable, yes.
There's a lot of shots where it's more abstract to convey what he sees.
Right, of him being able to see through different layers of whatever's in front of him. Almost like things are bleeding through each other.
And again, it's such a cost-effective way to do it. I imagine now, if they did a movie like this, there would be so much CGI.
Cartoon skeletons bouncing around and stuff.
If this was in the 90s, like in Total Recall, when he's going through the X-ray machine,
Yeah.
and it has that skeleton where he looks around before he jumps through. So then, after it works, Xavier says, I want to put more in. Within the same 10-minute span of having tried this crazy experimental drug in his eyes. It kind of bothers me because he's so meticulous about detailing everything and keeping a record, but as soon as it works, instead of saying, let me run a bunch of tests and write everything down and document everything, he right away says, I'm going to put more in my eyes right now.
Yeah, that's my one problem with the movie, is the way his character is established early on is not consistent with the way he acts throughout the movie, and there's not any real reason for him to change.
His personality throughout the movie does not change, so I could see if having dropped the stuff in his eyes and it working go a little crazy, and that's why he does it, but he stays exactly the same.
Yeah, if maybe the chemicals were affecting his brain somehow, but that's not established in the movie. His motivations for doing it seem to kind of change, but without any real reason, and without any explanation really as to what they are changing to.
So then when he drops more in his eyes, he goes unconscious, and he's like that for a few days. Fairfax goes to the board of directors and argues for Xavier's case. And the board says, well, nothing's come out of it, but it has. It works. And that seems a little contrived to get Xavier to feel more desperate.
It doesn't make a lot of sense.
He goes to the hospital, and the attending doctor says they're going to do this surgery because he thinks it's whatever's wrong with her. And Xavier looks inside her and says, if you do this operation, she's going to die. You're in the totally wrong spot.
So that's an example of him using his power for what he said he wanted to use it for, basically, which is to help people. That's something that I like about this movie, is he's genuinely a good person who wants to use his abilities for good. And even later, when he can see through women's clothing, for example.
He's amused, not lecherous. Let's talk about the party. The party's a little awkward. It seems like the actors have never been to a party.
Some of the dancing is really goofy, of course.
They're intellectuals, okay? So 1, they're all going to wear suits. 2, they're not going to know how to dance.
Those are good points, yeah.
Their dancing is so weird. It was like, the dancing is for people way younger than them.
Right.
But the filmmaker said we wanted to appeal to the youngsters. So here's the dances that they're doing.
Given that it's Roger Corman, a lot of these people are probably not actors and were just part of the crew. And he said, hey, we need more people in the scene. Get in front of the camera.
And I can see Roger Corman with his goofy ass saying, this is how the dance goes.
And it's weird the way the young student wants to dance with this guy.
And then when Ray Milland actually starts dancing, it's awesome.
That's one way to describe it, yeah.
It looks like somebody told him, if you don't dance, I'm going to kill your whole family. And he's like, all right. Even though this is a Roger Corman movie, when it changes his view, so he sees everyone at the party dancing naked, it's still very restrained.
For the time, I'm sure it was pushing some limits.
And then he gets a little weird when he's talking to Fairfax, and he says, you look quite lovely. No, I mean it. You're really attractive. No, you don't understand what I'm saying.
I think it's handled in a playful way. I mean, if this came out in the 80s, I'm sure there'd be a lot more scenes like that. That would probably be half of the movie.
So the effects are becoming more intense, and his doctor colleague says, logically, it could be affecting other parts of your brain, we should do more tests, someone has to examine you. And to cause some unnecessary drama, Dr. Xavier just freaks out and shoves him out the window.
It was very unexpected.
His scream as he's falling, and the fake body falling. That's the part, if you're watching this movie with other people, you all start laughing.
You don't really see anything, but it feels like you do.
That event is what forces Xavier to have to leave. So then we see Don Rickles in a very rare, non-comedic role.
Yeah, and he does a really good job in a serious role in this movie. I was impressed and surprised.
Don Rickles had already become a success as a comedian. People already knew who he was. He'd already hit his stride, which is interesting that he would choose to do this movie after already making it. He probably did it as a favor to Roger Corman, which seems like a lot of the time that's why people do stuff for Roger Corman. I know James Cameron even puts him in movies when he can.
A lot of people that he's worked with put him in movies in small roles.
It made me think of Leslie Nielsen, because before Airplane, Leslie Nielsen was attempting to be a serious actor. And then once he had his role in Airplane as the Doctor, that became his career.
You've got Dick Miller there in the audience.
Dick Miller is a very Roger Corman regular. Dick Miller is also in Gremlins.
Directed by Joe Dante, who started out working for Roger Corman.
So Ray Milland ends up in a circus. They call him Mentalo, the man with a miraculous mind.
This is one thing, though, where it doesn't feel like this is something his character would do, whether this is his situation or not, whether he's on the run or not. It just feels out of place, like they just said, well, let's put him in a circus.
It kind of bothers me how Dick Miller is always chewing something. But he's not chewing like a regular person. He's chewing like a cow. So Ray Milland's walking around wearing these thick sunglasses all the time. As an audience member, you want to see what's behind it. And Roger Corman does a really good job of not showing that for most of the movie. Whereas if this movie were made today, they would show it in the trailer.
Yeah, that's true.
So then Don Rickles reveals that he's been an asshole the whole time when he says, I know you're for real. I know you can see through stuff, and we're going to make money. Real money. But the joke's on him, because we already know Don Rickles is an asshole. So they end up at this ramshackle house, and that's going to be their base of operations, where they're going to have sick people come in, and Ray Milland's going to tell them what's wrong with them.
So he keeps being able to see farther and farther through things, and it gets to the point where he's looking through these walls, and he sees what looks like the surface of a shimmering body of water that's really bright, and he screams, and the whole thing fades to black.
He does a really good job of playing a tragic character.
Yes, but then as the audience, you do have to question, why does he keep putting stuff in his eyes? What more is there to see?
It was a little unclear if he had to keep doing it to avoid the pain. That's kind of how I saw it, because he doesn't like what he sees. He wants to stop, but he keeps dripping it into his eyes.
His motivations could have been explained a little better.
So eventually Fairfax shows up to the clinic and confronts him, and then he runs away. And Don Rickles doesn't want him to leave, and he knows that he killed somebody. That's why he's on the run. And he screams,
He ain't no healer! He ain't! He looks inside you and he gives you the sickness, and you die!
And Xavier, at this point for some reason, decides that he needs to solve his problem and get better. I don't understand why now is the time. This whole segment of the movie feels like it should have happened earlier, because he says, I gotta solve this problem and I need money. So then he goes to a casino and gets a ton of money to fund his experiments. It seems like he should have done this first and then lost everything and then accidentally murdered the other doctor and then hit rock bottom.
Maybe he had to steal supplies in order to keep doing his experiments or something like that. That would have been a better reason early on for him to have to leave. Yeah, I agree. They could have restructured the movie and made it a little better.
In most movies where they go to Vegas, they have that almost expected montage of all the signs and the sights. And I like how this is a twisted version of that. Instead of seeing the signs the way they are, we see them as he sees them, which is all distorted and weird colors and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And instead of the expected big band music, we hear this Vegas showroom piano, and it itself is a twisted version of what we expect. He's wearing these glasses that are about 6 inches thick. Nobody says anything, like, nice glasses.
Yeah.
Or, what are you doing?
And these scenes in the casino are predictable in the way that they play out. You already know what's going to happen. But Roger Corman builds the scenes out in a way that doesn't make you bored.
And then he goes too far. It's the first time he lets his ability take control of him, and he gets pretty arrogant about it. Again, it would have made sense earlier in the film for him to become overconfident and then come crashing down. So then as he's trying to leave with all his money, the casino manager kind of says, hang on a minute, and he bumps into him and he knocks his glasses off, and we see for the first time what's going on underneath those glasses. And I really like that effect.
Yeah, it's really creepy and cool looking.
For as cheap as it is. I mean, Roger Corman probably couldn't even afford contact lenses. He said, hold still, I'm going to paint your eyeballs. So then he can't see really well, so he's driving all over the roads, and he crashes his car, and he stumbles to this religious revival tent.
And his vision is getting more and more distorted and difficult to tell what he's even looking at.
And then we see his eyes again, and they're totally black, which again looks so cool. And I think specifically of the X-Files movie, the first one.
Okay.
When they had the black oil go over their eyes, and they do it with all CGI or whatever, and I'm sure it cost $20,000 to do it, where in this case, they just put black contact lenses in and said, call it a day.
Yeah, it looks really effective. It probably looks a lot better than the X-Files movie.
So he gives this really cool monologue at the end about what he can see, and because he's in the religious revival tent,
They think he's seeing Satan.
You see sin and the devil.
he grabs his eyes and he goes out of frame. And I wish they had left it at that.
Yeah, they took a still image of his face and just cut his eyes out. So he's not moving, which makes it look even worse because you can really tell what you're looking at. Thankfully, it only holds for probably less than a second, but it could have been a little better. Conceptually, it works really well in terms of the story and in terms of just the way it ends and everything, but it just visually could have been more effective.
And I want to mention, Stephen King likes this movie, and he talks about it, and he claimed there was more to the ending. Back when it came out, after Ray Milland rips out his eyes, he screams, I can still see, which I thought would have been so awesome.
Yes. Unfortunately, Roger Corman has debunked that. He did say that that was not actually the case, but he did say that it would have been an even better ending. He agreed that that would have been awesome.
It was a cool movie. It was worth watching.
Yeah, a really cool, simple idea that's executed effectively and keeps you engaged the entire way through.
Effectively produced on a very low budget.
So yeah, check it out. It's pretty awesome. I physically gave a thumbs up there, so